Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So in this video, we will be discussing the writing process behind our editorial on the proposed 10-year limit for the Prime Minister's tenure. We will explain why our group chose to support this position, the key evidence and sources that we use, and how we develop our arguments throughout the writing process. So by the end of this video, you will have a better understanding of how our editorial was researched, structured, and supported with credible evidence. So without further ado, let's get started. So to answer the why in the question, we ultimately chose a firm stance, which is to support the strict 2-term limit or a maximum of 10 years for the Prime Minister's tenure. We chose this because we strongly believe that limiting power prevents political stagnation and encourages fresh leadership and new innovation for the government. We also believe it reduces the concentration of power to one person and reduces the risk of nepotism and cronyism. However, we didn't just agree on this immediately. We had a few discussions regarding this topic because some of our members were concerned that by limiting a Prime Minister's tenure could disrupt some long-term projects and reduce the political stability in the country. Moreover, if the Prime Minister is favoured by the public and generally wants them to stay, it might cause some chaos, right? So to resolve this issue, we examined some evidence that we found from our research, which came from news reports, opinion pieces, and discussions on constitutional reform in Malaysia. Ultimately, we reached a conclusion where 10 years is enough time for a capable leader to carry out major reforms and fulfill policy goals. Based on these factors, we concluded that a 2-term limit is the most effective approach for Malaysia's future governance.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So for the research hurdles, the biggest research hurdles that our group faced was finding the credible and specific evidence regarding the corporate controversies surrounding the Tun Dr. Mahathir's sons to prove the real dangers regarding the unlimited tenure in our country. While the general public frequently talk about the nepotism and cronyism, locating the hard journalistic facts and public data from the era proved to be incredibly difficult for us, because much of the historical documentation is locked behind the old media archives or heavily protected. Moving on, to verify the credibility of our sources and ensure we weren't just relying on hearsay, we cross-referenced public statements with verified historical reports from trusted international and regional press institutions such as the Straits Times. We also explicitly balance these historical controversies with official empirical data from the government's own legal affairs divisions, also known as BHEUU. Based on their research polls, it shows an overwhelming 89.9% public support. This proves that our arguments remain grounded in the objective data rather than biased speculation only. For rhetorical choices, when planning our presentations, we knew that the structural governance and constitutional law can easily come across as dry or overly academic to most of the younger generations. So, to prevent this, we made a deliberate rhetorical choice to open with a high-stake pathos or emotional hook. We did this by vividly setting the scene of the March 2nd, 2026. When a critical reform bill fell short by just 2 votes in the Dewan Rakyat. We explicitly call out the numbers, which are 146 votes in favour, 44 abstentions and 32 absent MPs. We chose this emotional angle because listing the legal institute alone doesn't move an audience. But by highlighting how a major promise reform collapsed due to the political absenteeisms triggers immediate frustration and urgency and a desire for accountability. In addition, this hook serves as a vital strategic purpose because it instantly captures the audience's attention and shifts the topics from the abstract legal debates into a living struggle for democracy. By making the audience feel the real world weight of political inactions, we perfectly prime them to understand how exactly and why a fixed of 10-year term limit is an urgent shield needed to protect the nation from a centralization of power.
Hi everyone, my name is Muhammad Hadi FASYHAN bin ZUNAIDI, and today I was in charge in developing the main arguments and also counterpoints for our editorial task to make sure our points were organized logically and easy to follow. We structure all of our body paragraph using the TEEEL framework. Let's look at the skeleton of our draft to see how this works. For the very first of our argument, we focus on the stopping the centralization of power. Our topic sentence is that a 10-year limit is necessary to protect our democracy. For the explanation, we discuss how keeping a leader in office for too long allows power to stack up in a single person, which can turn government departments into a whole new political tools. For the next 2 points of argument section, we also use the same TEEL structure. We brought in the historical proof and public support. We also use the solid evidence like the BHEUU poll that showing 89.9% of Malaysians support this change, alongside with the statements from the Center of Combat Corruption and Communism. Then, on the next point, we also use stability argument. Our evaluation here was straightforward. True stability doesn't come from keeping one person in power forever, but it comes from the fair systems that rotate leaders safely. Now, a strong editorial cannot be completed if we are not analyzing the other section of arguments, which is the counter-arguments and rebuttal section. So, for this session, we brought out a concession and rebuttal skeleton. First, we represent the concession by fairly stating opposition leader Hamzah Zainuddin's argument that a 10-year limit is unlawful because it restricts the king's power to appoint a prime minister. After that, we deliver our logical refutation. We explain how Malaysia's political system works. Since we are constitutional monarchy, the king's power are given by the constitution, which is the supreme law of the land. No one is above of this law. We pointed out that if changing this law were unlawful, then every single constitutional amendment in Malaysia's history would be unlawful.
For the editing section, we edited some sentences and words so that it would be more coherent and sound. We also made changes to certain sentences so that the message would be delivered stronger and clearer, or a cohesion audit. For example, the paragraph or the sentences on the left is a bit wordy and the argument doesn't sound as strong, whereas on the right, where I had put a premise and ensured what would happen if the said premise is true, that sounds more sound and reasonable. We also double check all the in-text citations and references to make sure there are no errors. We also make sure the whole article follows the format of the assignment.